An orphan boy is suddenly taken back to the magical island he was born, where he meets the friends and students of his late father who train him to become a powerful lay master like his father. The anime begins one night when there's suddenly a massive explosion on one of the Ayaka Islands. This leaves the nearby islands and villages in flames, and we see two guys running to escape from the fire. The older boy named Jingi checks on the younger boy named Yukido and assures him that they'll get to the ferry safely. Meanwhile, not far from them, we see a man trying to calm the island residents down, assuring them that there will be more ferries to evacuate them. Jingi takes Yukido to meet the man and tells him that someone named Momoko asked them to get on the boat. Hearing the name, the man suddenly agrees, and the young boys tell him that they have two other friends named Harueki and Ibuki who they left behind, but the man just tells them that their master Yanagi is gone to rescue them and insinuates that he would leave Yanagi behind if he doesn't return on time. Elsewhere, we see Yanagi casually talking to the fire Aramitama at the origin of the explosion. He talks about how impatient the fire is, and as it rages on, he's convinced that putting out the massive flames would be his final job. While that's going on, Harueki manages to escape the island with Ibuki. Harueki collapses as soon as they land, and Ibuki calls out to him to wake up. Unfortunately, his burns are too severe, and it seems like he won't survive. On the ferry, the boys look back to their island home being totally destroyed by the flames, and all they can do is worry about Master Yanagi. A few years pass after that, and we see that Yukido has grown since then while living in foster homes. One day, he receives a letter from a man named Inu, claiming to be his father's friend and informing him that he would be taking him in after he graduates middle school. This means that Yukido would have to move back to his birthplace on one of the Ayaka Islands to live with Inu. He ignores the message, and later that night, he dreams about being alone underwater like he usually does. He finds the dream strangely pleasant because he likes to be alone and doesn't like getting close to people. However, this time the dream is different because someone pulls him out of the water and he wakes up from the dream. A while later, Yukido graduates from middle school, and his teacher expresses her displeasure that Inu would suddenly come to claim him after several years. However, Yukido doesn't mind moving because he never got attached to anyone. Suddenly, he sees the other students gathered around a drunk guy entertaining them. It turns out this tipsy fellow is Jingi, but Yukido doesn't recognize him, so he walks away from him. To prove that Yukido is the right person, Jingi pushes him off a bridge. Suddenly, Yukido's powers are activated, but Jingi quickly uses a special technique to stop them from getting out of hand. Afterward, he uses a magical bag to engulf Yukido and teleports into a boat where he explains that he's going to be his older brother figure because Yukido's father, Master Yanagi, was like a father to him. They then ride some sort of sea train called a marine liner to Ayaka Island, where Yukiro meets Momoko and Inu, who happens to be the mayor of the island. After the introductions, they take him back to their home, and Yukido seems to have lost all memory of the place he once lived till he was 5 years old. He asked about his mother, but they tell him that his father, Yanagi, never talked about her. They tell him about their role as lay masters to maintain harmony on the island, and Momoko points out that Yukido would join them since he's the son of Master Yanagi. After getting settled in, Yukido sees a strange creature called a Mitama in his room, and Jingi tells him the creature is harmless and there are many on the island. Jingi soon notices that Yukido prefers being distant, so he confronts him about it, and Yukido reveals that in the past, he lost control of his powers several times, which caused him to stay by himself so he wouldn't put others in danger. Later that evening, Yukido goes for a stroll and is attacked by an Aramitoma that transforms into a water demon. Jingi arrives in time and explains that the creature is the evil counterpart of the harmless Mitama he saw in his room. During the fight, the irresponsible Jingi pushes Yukido into the watery part of the monster. At this point, Yukido has had enough of his shenanigans, so he snaps and blows up the monster. He also tries attacking Jingi, but he easily deflects it. Afterward, Jingi infers that Yukido is afraid of his powers and offers to teach him to control them. He also encourages him to be more open and suggests that they celebrate their victory. A subtle way of saying, "let's go get drunk." So Yukido takes his advice to be more open and playfully drop-kicks him into the water as payback for all his pranks. Meanwhile, Harueki Kurama had been spying on Yukido since he arrived on the island while Ibuki and his apprentice were scanning the area for abnormalities. The next morning, Jingi wakes up to find Yukido already training. However, he's doubtful that Jingi's methods would help him master his powers quickly, so Jingi decides to show him what one can do with their powers after mastering them. The ever-tipsy, self-acclaimed older brother conjures a creature made of water to demonstrate how effective the powers would be after he's learned to control them. Jingi explains how they draw their power from the island and encourages Yukido to channel his energy from there while practicing the techniques he taught him. Later, a devastated Jingi laments about how he can't afford any more booze, so he suggests that they pacify Aramithamas for money together so that Yukido can also learn to control his powers in the process. Elsewhere, Harueki's apprentices Yako and Chetaro argue over which of them should get the quest to pacify Matamas, but Jingi snatches the job from them while they're bickering. Yukido shyly introduces himself before Jingi takes him to the site for the job. Yukido asks if it was okay to snatch the quest from Yako and Chetaro, and he assures him that it won't be able since it's for the sake of training. He tells Yukido about how Matamas get corrupted once in a while, so it's their job to pacify them when they start to become threatening. Suddenly, the Aramitoma emerges from the water and Yukido notices that it's even bigger than the one they fought before. For some reason, the guy who's supposed to be teaching quickly takes to his heels, leaving Yukido both disappointed and perplexed. While they're being chased, Yako and Chetaro go back to the shrine to inform the priest, Kurama, that Jingi stole the job and took the newbie with him. Back at the canal, Jingi and Yukido escape, but a fisherman encourages them to pacify the Mitama, so they decide to go back and come up with a plan. Jingi tells Yukido to act as bait, but he refuses, which causes an unnecessary squabble that gives their position to the creature. It attacks Jingi and Yukido takes the chance to use his training to attack it. Seeing the creature vulnerable, Jingi unleashes an attack of his own and soon realizes that the Mitama was the water creature he created before, but it had been corrupted. The monster reforms itself ready to resume the battle, but Kurama arrives in time to save them. Afterward, he introduces himself to Yukido, and it turns out he was also one of Master Yanegi's students. After punishing Jingi for his carelessness and drunkenness, Kurama joins Yukido and Momoko for dinner. Yukido praises Kurama's spells, so he explains how the Mitamas get corrupted by negative energy and why the lay masters have to pacify them. We see Jingi and Yukido on a marine liner headed for the first Ayako Island. The little guy is amazed by the sea train, and Jingi assures him that he'll get used to it in no time. From afar, Yukido can already see that the first island is a lot more modern with more buildings, and Jingi confirms this as he goes on and on about the amazing casinos and parlors which suit his carefree lifestyle pretty well. When they arrive on the island, Jingi takes him to meet Inu the mayor. Inu asks Jingi to show Yukiti around the island, thinking the booze lover would be responsible for once. He was wrong. It doesn't take long before the reckless tour guide abandons Yukido to go make trouble with the store vendor, demanding the last piece of meat that had already been reserved for someone else. Thankfully, the more level-headed Yukido settles the argument before procuring something else for them. Moments after they leave the stall, a guy in a suit goes to collect the reserved meat. Meanwhile, Jingi keeps complaining about how he really wanted the meat. His lamentations are cut short when they see a street clown performing. They're both impressed by him, but then suddenly, the balloon transforms into a fire Aramitama that attacks them and all the tourists around. Thankfully, the guy in the suit arrives and shoots down the corrupted Mitama. It turns out the guy is Ibuki, who also trained under Yanagi, so he recognizes Yukido. Afterward, he takes Yukido to the bar he owns, and guess who we find working at the place? Yep, the Lord of the Bottles in the person of Jingi. Yukido is understandably mad at him for sneaking into the bar while they were being attacked by the Aramitama, but Ibuki ends the argument. Unlike Kurama, Ibuki doesn't pacify the Mitamas to remove the corruption. Instead, he just obliterates them with the special bullets in his gun. Ibuki believes that destroying the Aramitamas quickly and saving people from them is more important than pacifying them to maintain the balance of ley energy. Suddenly, they're informed that the Aramitama Ibuki destroyed was just a fragment of the real threat, so Ibuki asks Jingi to take Yukido home while he handles the monster. Once again, someone makes the mistake of putting too much faith in this reckless dude. Along the way, Jingi remembers that he didn't collect his allowance from Ibuki, so he leaves Yukido and heads back. While he's away, Yukido decides to be the main character he is and runs toward the action. There, he's attacked by the Aramitama, but Ibuki unleashes a barrage of bullets on it. Sure, that's not enough to finish it, so Ibuki then uses black magic to transform his right arm into a monstrous form which he uses to absorb the Aramitama's power, which is considered an abomination among lay masters. Using the power, Ibuki kills the Aramitama before crushing the core and drinking its content. That's a hard dude right there. After that whole saga, Jingi and Yukido travel to the third Ayako Island. The place turns out to be more peaceful and has a more natural setting. As you'd expect, Jingi isn't a fan of the place since it doesn't have any of the crazy things or places he enjoys. They're welcomed by Kurama, Yako, and Shotaro, who come to show them around the place. Jingy doesn't like them, but Yukito hopes to befriend Kurama's students since they're the same age. They take him to the shrine which was built for the two dragons living on the fourth island. The dragons of fire and water live mostly docile on the island, but whenever they go on a rampage, the shrine is used to pacify them. Later, Yukito tells Kurama about Ibuki's horrifying approach to handling eremitamas and asks him why they don't believe in the same method even though they were trained by the same master. Kurama just evades the question and decides to teach Yukito how to connect to the ley energy on the islands. Yukito begins to dig deep within himself and detects a huge amount of let energy, but Kurama brings him back before he goes too far because it can also be dangerous. The clever boy finds a way to bring Ibuki back into the conversation, and Kurama reveals that Ibuki is slowly becoming an eremitama by consuming them. Later, while Yukito hangs out with Chitaro and Yako, Kurama and Jinny discuss Yukito's training and Ibuki's dark path. The other students take Yukito to a beautiful park with blooming trees where they tell him that they would like to be his friends. They then ask him to leave the reckless Jinny and instead train with them under Kurama. However, Yukito remains loyal and politely declines their offer. The field turns out to be their training ground, and Chitaro decides to demonstrate some of the things they've learned from Kurama by taking a seed and channeling the ley energy to make it sprout into a tree in an instant. Yako does the same, and they encourage Yukito to try it out. They tell him not to get his hopes up since it's only his first try. These guys don't seem to know they're talking to the main character here. Yukito takes a seed, and on his first try, a huge tree emerges from the ground. His power is so much that it doesn't stop growing till Jingy arrives to actually be a good mentor for the first time. He guides him and helps him control the energy, causing him to stop the growth. Afterward, he switches back to his usual mood and heads off to drink himself into a stupor. Meanwhile, Yako and Chitaro try to convince Yukito to join them under Kurama, but he refuses and decides to stick with Jingy. Later that night, Kurama goes to the place where Yukito grew the massive tree, and he's taken aback so much that he begins to wonder who the kid really is. That's all for today's recap. Hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to see the next part. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.